With NBA free agency set to start less than a month away, for Bulls fans and the media, most of the focus has been, of course, on the future of DeMar DeRozan and whether the Bulls will re-sign him before he becomes an unrestricted free agent on July 1st, or I guess now it's the evening of June 30th. And while DeMar's impending free agency will have huge implications for the Bulls as it relates to their cap sheet, their ability or inability to sign other free agents while remaining under the tax, and also just the direction and overall future of this franchise should they re-sign DeMar or not. So yes, it's no surprise that most of the focus of this Bulls offseason has been on DeMar DeRozan and his future with the team. But what I feel hasn't been talked about enough when it comes to the Bulls offseason is Patrick Williams' restricted free agency and whether the Bulls plan on keeping Patrick around. Can they afford to keep him, and what's the interest level going to be around the league for his services? That is until we got a recent report from Darnell Mayberry, who covers the Bulls for The Athletic, that there has been one team that has shown strong interest in acquiring Patrick Williams, and that's the Oklahoma City Thunder. Darnell, who of course previously covered the Thunder for a number of years before joining the Bulls beat, and also covered the Thunder's postseason this year. And the report kind of saw mixed reactions from Bulls fans, from some saying whatever, let the Thunder have him, to match any offer he receives. The Bulls cannot afford to lose Patrick Williams, a young player who hasn't entered his prime yet. And so I wanted to talk about it further to understand the implications of what it would mean for the Bulls to potentially lose Patrick Williams and what the cost would be to retain him. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Now, when the new front office drafted Patrick Williams in 2020 as one of their first orders of business in the new role, well, the first being firing Jim Boylan, thank God, but when they selected Pat 4th overall for a player who hadn't even started for his own college team, a player who had initially projected to be a late lottery selection before his stock started rising in the weeks leading up to the draft, most people saw the pick as a bit of a stretch, myself included. But as we got to see Patrick play and open runs before the season, seeing him in his rookie year, and you thought, okay, there is potential with this kid. After all, he's only 19, he has the tools to be a high-level defender, but also a capable scoring option. But unfortunately, Pat's sophomore season was cut short due to injury. Obviously, with the Bulls focusing on winning now, Pat's role and development fundamentally changed. And while we said it so many times, we've seen the flashes, we've seen the potential, but at the same time, it hasn't been quick enough to what we would like to see as Bulls fans, especially for a number 4 overall pick. And look, chalk it up however you like. Patrick Williams' career thus far and what he has delivered in his rookie contract has been underwhelming. Like, even for the biggest Patrick stans, you can't deny that his progression overall from his rookie year to this past season has been disappointing, especially when you see others from his class excelling and even players who came in draft classes after him already outperforming him overall as a player. Now, I'll start with the basics on what it means to be a restricted free agent, just for those who aren't aware, although I'm sure most of you are familiar with how restricted free agency works. But unlike an unrestricted free agent, where a player has the ability to go wherever they want, a restricted free agent, on the other hand, does have the ability to go out and get contract offers from teams around the league, and their current team has the ability to match any offer sheet within 24 hours to retain them. It used to be 48 hours, they reduced that as part of the new CBA. But this rule of restricted free agency was put in place to prevent stars who, after finishing their rookie scale deals, could just leave to any team they wanted because they were offered the most money. I believe this was put in place after Shaq left the Orlando Magic for the Lakers after his rookie contract, and the Magic essentially lost him for nothing and didn't have the ability to match an offer or even give him more money because he was a free agent and could go wherever he wanted. So as it relates to the Bulls and Patrick Williams, because they weren't able to agree on an extension this past offseason, Pat will be a restricted free agent come July 1st. And he can get offers from other teams, which the Bulls can match to keep him, or the Bulls can actually sign him within the first few hours to prevent any team from even giving him an offer, or a team makes him an offer, the Bulls say it's too rich for them, they choose not to match, and Patrick Williams walks. Now, the Oklahoma City Thunder potentially being interested in Patrick Williams, which I don't doubt is real. I trust Darnell's reporting. You guys know I've had him on the channel a handful of times. I respect him as a journalist, and he holds a lot of credibility in this industry. And if this is in fact the case, and the Thunder also being a team that has cap space to be able to sign him, the Bulls need to start seriously thinking about making Pat a strong offer. You know, initially, when we were discussing the Bulls salary cap situation at the end of the season, we were talking about the possibility of Pat taking the qualifying offer, which I believe is around $13 million. Taking that offer, betting on himself, and hoping for a bigger, longer-term contract, given he's coming off a pretty big injury, and that there probably isn't going to be much interest in him, and the Bulls might actually be able to get away with getting him on a cheap deal. If teams are showing interest, especially for teams that have cap space, they have to rethink everything and assume that if they want to keep Pat, they're going to have to pay up and match an offer sheet that is probably going to make them uncomfortable. And the reason it's even more troubling if it's a team with cap space like the Thunder, they don't necessarily have to do a sign and trade to fit him into their cap sheet. So the Bulls also can't assume that, well, if any team really wants Pat and they give him some crazy offer that we're not keen on matching, we'll just work out a sign and trade so we can get something for him in return. Not if they don't have to. If the team that makes him an offer has the cap space to bring him in without acquiring him via trade, they can say too bad. We're giving him an offer. You can choose to match it or not. We're not giving up assets to get him. And look, wherever you stand on Patrick Williams, you like him or not, you're a big time believer and think he's a star in the making, or you think he's a scrub that won't amount to anything. Wherever you land, you absolutely cannot let Patrick Williams walk for nothing. The Bulls cannot let their former number 4 overall pick, their 22-year-old power forward, just leave for nothing. I know I tweeted this yesterday when the news broke, but Patrick Williams and his skill set, a player with size, athleticism, long, lengthy wing defender, can guard multiple positions, but also shoot threes at a 40% clip. Even if all Pat ever becomes just a role player in the NBA, he has a skill set that is highly coveted in this league. You can't let that go for nothing. At a minimum, the Bulls, if the offer is too high and they're too cheap and the amount puts them well over the tax line, at a minimum, the Bulls have to execute a sign and trade of some kind if they decide to do away with their Patrick Williams experiment. Now, Darnell Mayberry did say, hey, the Thunder could make this deal more attractive by including some of the draft picks they have at their disposal. And in that instance, depending on what kind of picks we're talking about here, then okay, that could be something to entertain. But when the Bulls are already lacking size on this roster, they're likely going to lose Andre Drummond in free agency. I mean, unless they draft a big and then plan to pick up another 1 or 2 big bodies in free agency with the money they don't have, by the way, what do they do then? No, the Bulls need size, shooting, defense, and most importantly, they need youth. They have to hold on to their young players when the future of this franchise is so uncertain. Like, that's the thing. Whether the Bulls look to stay competitive or rebuild, Patrick can be part of both of those equations. He's good enough to still be a rotational player on a team looking to compete, and then also being a foundational piece that you would want to develop in a rebuild. There is just no scenario in which the Bulls can allow Pat to walk for nothing. They need to match any offer he gets or do a sign and trade with whatever team makes him the highest offer. Now, I'm not going to say the Bulls should match any offer, like it has to be within reason, but at the same time though, we also know Pat's not getting a max deal from some team. He's not even going to get a near max deal. He hasn't proven enough in the early stages of his career for any team to warrant that, especially with his injury history as well. So whatever potential contract offer he receives from another team, it is going to be within reason. Teams aren't going to look to overpay for Patrick Williams. And so it'll be on the Bulls now to open up the checkbook and pay up. Because for a player at his age with his skill set, even if he doesn't work out for the Bulls long term, he'll be a tradable asset for the future on a contract that is not absurd, unlike the situation the Bulls have found themselves in right now with Zach Lavine. So what could a contract look like for Pat? I've said before, but I expect to see him getting something in the $15 to $20 million a year range. And I know some will say that's absurd, but keep in mind, the mid-level exception going into the season is $12.9 million. At $15 million, that's just slightly above the mid-level. And even on the high end, at $20 million, it might seem steep right now relative to Pat's production, but the salary cap is only going up every year. And even at $20 million, that's going to look more and more favorable over time as he starts to enter his prime. But either way, it's going to be interesting to see how everything shakes out a month from now, not only for Patrick Williams and his future, but that of DeMar as well. And of course, how the Bulls approach the direction of this franchise going forward. So I'd love to hear what you guys think though. Let me know in the comments. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.